Luna Barber here, telling you some tales this evening. I'd like to start with the tale. I know that over the years when I've been telling stories to people, quite often when people hear how the story ends, oh, they would have made a different ending if they had told the story. But stories come with their own endings, except every once in a while you'll come across a story that doesn't actually have an ending and you can provide it. So I'm going to start off by telling you that story. Well, there's king, there's a king in lots of stories that we tell. And this king was a particularly, he was not a nice man, let's just put it that way. He was extremely cruel. His one love in life was his daughter, his beautiful princess daughter. So you can imagine how he felt when she began to court a young man who he felt was just simply not good enough for her. He was just a simple man. He had no title, he had no wealth, he had nothing. So he wanted to put an end to this relationship. And his daughter was heartbroken. She didn't want that. Now, the level of cruelty of this king, I can tell you by some of the things that he did and some of the things that he had. He had cellars underneath the palace that were designed in such a way for him to punish the people that he felt needed to be punished. And they could have done just the slightest thing and they would get quite a severe punishment. And if they had done something really bad, and he would, just for the sake of having somebody to punish, he would actually blame people for doing things that they hadn't done. And the punishment for that wouldn't be really severe. But when somebody did something that really upset him, well, he had 2 rooms in that cellar. And behind the doors of those rooms, which were big, huge wooden doors, one held a tiger that would tear you to shreds if you opened that door. And he decided for this particular criminal, who was the young man that his princess daughter was courting, he hadn't committed any crime. That was his crime. And what he was given the choice of with these 2 doors was open the one where the tiger was behind, or open the one where there would be a very beautiful woman, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Well, you can imagine how the princess felt when she found out about this. And what she did, because she was the princess, she was able to find her way around things. She was able to find out things that ordinarily would not have been available to her. And she managed to bribe the guards, and she found out which door was which. She knew which door held the tiger, and she knew which door held that very beautiful woman. But the sting in the tail, as far as the beautiful woman was concerned, was that if the young man opened that door, he had to marry that woman. So the king was getting rid of him no matter what. He was either going to be eaten by the tiger, or he was going to have to marry this woman and take her away elsewhere, away from the palace. Well, the princess was beside herself with grief. What was she to do? Her choice was lose him altogether if he was killed by the tiger, or lose him to a beautiful woman. I mean, that's cruelty beyond measure. What do you think she would have chosen to do? Because right now, the choice is yours. You can decide whether she saved him by letting him marry another woman, or if she sent him to his death by letting him open the door with the tiger behind it. And just to make this situation even a little bit more sad, the young man knew that the princess knew which door was which. So he was going to find out that whatever fate he had was the one that she decided. Well, actually, it's the one that you decided. So can I just ask you, okay, Omar, Tell me, what do you think she decided? Do you think she decided to let him marry the beautiful woman? Or do you think she decided to let him be eaten by the tiger? What do you think?
Maybe the first one.
Big loud voice?
Maybe the first one, first choice.
Ah,
I don't think so.
you don't think so?
No,
What do you think, Karen?
I think she decided him to open the door, and then a kind of adventure begins.
Yeah, but he could only choose, she could only choose, he could only choose, she can only choose one door. She's got his life in her hands.
Yeah.
So she can let him go away and marry this beautiful woman and never see him again, or she can have him eaten by the tiger. She's going to lose him.
But I
either
think
way.
he will not be eaten by the tiger.
No.
No,
So
he's
he goes away with
fighting.
the
He's
beautiful
fighting.
woman. Okay.
And he's marrying
Yes.
at the end.
So either way, the sad part and the sad ending of this story is that it's the king who gets his way, because the young man, no matter what, is out of the picture.
I don't think so.
No.
No.
What do you think would
I
happen
think,
then, Marcy?
I think she gives him to the tiger and then she finds a way to save him. And the father thinks he's dead.
Oh, that's interesting. You think she might have bribed the guards to let him get away?
I think she has some sorcerer or a witch
Yes,
somewhere
yes.
that helps get him together, put him together again, and they can run off. And
Yeah.
I think that's what
I
the
think so
result
too,
like.
yeah.
That's the one. No,
Sounds good.
Johannes, what do you think? No? You don't want to hear any of that happening? No. Very sad. Anyway, that's a story where you were able to decide how it
So
ended.
you don't tell the story to the end?
Pardon?
Don't you tell the story to the end?
No. The story was written by a man called J.R. Stockland, and that's what he wanted. He wanted to present a story to people that they would be able to put to the end.
Okay.
Yes, so they could decide the ending.
Okay.
Because he often, when he wrote stories, people would write to him and say, well, we didn't want that to be the ending. We wish that had happened or this had happened.
Okay.
So in the end,
So
he wrote that story to say, okay, you choose.
Yeah. So people are also not satisfied.
Yes, it's included, yeah. Now this is another story about, well, actually, this is a story about a young Greek woman who lived in a village in Greece. And she was so beautiful that people would make the journey to that village just to see her, just to, if she actually lived up to the reputation of being the most beautiful woman in the world. And so many people came to see this young woman. And she didn't only just have the gift of being beautiful, she was also an incredible weaver. She could weave tapestries, and when they were on the wall, the characters in those tapestries looked as if they could just step right off that tapestry. They were so lifelike. Now, she had another characteristic trait which was not so pleasant. She was an extremely obnoxious young woman, extremely obnoxious. She was horrible to her own mother. She was rude, she was arrogant, she was just very unpleasant, and nobody liked her. The whole of the village actually detested that young woman. And her mother was heartbroken because when she was born and was such a beautiful child, she had high hopes for her. Now she had no hope for her. And for one of the reasons being that she was extremely rude about the gods. She would say that she didn't believe the gods even existed. I've got my gifts because I am me, she would say. I am beautiful because I was born that way. I am a wonderful weaver because I taught myself to weave. Nobody taught me how to do that. And her mother despaired. And her mother said to her, you should be thankful to the gods. Oh, the gods, she said, they don't even exist. You go on about this all the time, mother. I don't believe the gods even exist. Unfortunately for her, the gods were listening, and Athena in particular. And she was furious. Who is this young upstart of a girl? Who does she think she is that she can be so condescending to me as one of the gods and to my fellow gods? I think I need to teach this young woman a lesson. And at that point, Athena decided to make a visit. And she came to that Greek village dressed as an old woman. And she knocked on the door of Athena's home, of Arachne's home. And Arachne opened the door and looked at this old woman and discussed. She said, who are you and what do you want? And Athena said, I've come to see your tapestries. I believe you are a wonderful weaver. She said, well, yes, I am. Do you want to buy one? And Athena said, no, I don't want to buy one. I just want to see them because I want to see if they're as good as mine. As good as yours? As good as you? You're an old woman. You probably can't even see properly. Your tapestries can be nowhere as good as mine. Athena did not like this young woman at all. And her mother, the poor woman, was absolutely demented. Arachne, you can't speak to people like that. That's so wrong. You're being so rude. And she invited Athena to come into the house. And Athena said to Arachne, I want to challenge you. I think I'm a better weaver than you. Are you telling me you don't want to take up the challenge? Are you afraid? And Arachne said, no, I am not afraid. Absolutely not. I know I'm a better weaver than you. Look at my tapestries. And Athena said, yes, I know, I can see them. They are absolutely wonderful. But I don't think they're just as good as mine. But if you don't want to take up the challenge, that's fine. I can go away and tell people that you refused the challenge, so I can claim to be, oh, she wasn't having that. She said, fair enough then. We will have our challenge. What do you want me to weave? And Athena said, why don't you weave a depiction of the gods? Oh, they don't even really exist. Can we not choose something else? Athena said, no, I've set the challenge. I choose. I choose that we make a depiction of the gods. I will come back in 3 days' time. I don't need 3 days, said Arachne. Do it tomorrow. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Because not only was her weaving magnificent, she was extremely fast. And sure enough, Athena didn't agree to come back the next day. She agreed to come back the day after because she wasn't going to be able to do what she wanted to do in 1 day. When she went back to that house and saw that young woman's tapestries of the gods, she was absolutely, unbelievably overwhelmed because it was out of this world. It was utterly amazing, fantastic, except that it was extremely rude. This young woman had depicted the gods in such a way. Zeus had a huge hooked nose. Athena herself had a turned up chin. She had made all of them look ridiculous. One of them had donkey's ears, another one had horns coming out of the head. And Athena was furious. But at the same time, she had to admit that it was absolutely incredible. And she had to admit that it was better than hers. But she said to the young woman, I am going to punish you for this. You've lived long enough being able to do what you want, say what you want, be horrible to everybody, including your own mother. But you crossed the line when you did this and demonized the gods. You have 2 gifts. You are extremely beautiful and you are extremely talented at weaving. Which one would you like me to take from you? And Arachne said, oh, please, please don't take my beauty. If you take my beauty, I'll never be able to leave this village. There's nobody here that I would want to marry. I want to go to the cities and find myself a rich husband. Well, that's the one I'm going to take. I'm going to take your beauty, she said. and she put her hand on Arachne's head, and she started to push down and down and down and down, and pushed it all the way to the floor, where she became just a small black blob. Then she spread her fingers, and that black blob had 8 legs. Then she pressed it here, and it formed a small head, and 2 huge red eyes came out on stalks. It was the ugliest thing you could ever imagine. And she said, you are going to live in that dark corner, and people will despise you, and you will spawn thousands more just like yourself. And you will be all over the world, and people all over the world will hate and despise you, because you, Arachne, are the first spider, and you will be hated forever. And that is the story of Arachne, the first spider.
Thank you.
The one thing I didn't tell you, and this is what happens when you tell the stories when everything's all happening at once, was that there was another little part to that story, and that was that on the way up to the village where that young woman lived, a puddle had just appeared out of nowhere some years before, and no matter what people did to try and get rid of that puddle, they never could. It just came back the very next day. Even when they got scientists coming from all over the world to try and find out what the cause was, they could never get rid of it. And when Athena left, she took that puddle with her. Why? Just because she could. Just because she was a goddess and she could. So she did the villagers a favour. But also, the other thing I never told you was we did not leave Arachne's mother grieving in sadness, because before Athena did that to Arachne, she went and put her hand on her mother's head and she disappeared. Athena transported her to another country, to another life, where she had a different husband, a different child, and lived that life happily ever after. So the next time I tell the story of Arachne, I must remember to put those bits in when I'm telling you the story. So now I'm going to tell you one that I've told recently that I'm much more familiar with and that I hope you'll like. I'm going to tell you the story of the young seal mother. Actually, I've changed my mind. I'm going to tell you the story of the mermaid. Mermaids are magical creatures. They are absolutely fascinating. And there was one young mermaid in particular who was, despite the warnings from her father, which she was told often not to go into the harbour and, interfere with the nets, because she and her friends would go in there and they would slice open the nets and free the fish, and they would open the lobster pots and set the lobsters free. And the fishermen never really knew that this was happening, because they always assumed that the nets had been sliced by being caught on rocks and all sorts of other things. But it was that young mermaid that was doing this. And her father warned her. He said, one day you will be caught and you will be sorry. Well, that same young mermaid carried on doing that. Meantime, there's another young woman who's walking along the beach, and she's carrying her shoes in her hand, and her feet are squelching through the sand, making that incredibly squelchy sound. And normally she would be quite delighted to be feeling the sand under her feet, walking along the beach. But on this particular day, she had a very heavy heart. She was saddened beyond belief. she saw a conch shell, a huge conch shell, and she loved them. And she picked it up and shook the sand out of it and held it to her ear, expecting to hear the sound of the sea. But that's not what she heard. She heard a voice, and that voice said, I'm so glad that you eventually picked me up. I've been waiting to talk to you for some time. The rock behind you, take yourself over there and sit down, because I've got something to tell you, something you need to know. And she told that young woman of how she had been captured when she was caught cutting the nets. She'd been pulled up and she had been dumped ceremoniously onto the deck of the ship along with all of the fish. And she only had a matter of seconds to make the one wish that she had, which was to have human legs. And she did that in a flash. So when the fishermen came to the nets to gather the fish and they saw this young woman, the captain, in his decency, removed his jacket so she could cover herself. And then he helped her up from the net and he spoke to her and he said, where have you come from, lassie? You've a bump on your head. Did you fall in the water? Did you fall from the harbour? She pretended not to understand him. She could speak 7 languages, but she didn't speak a word. She stayed silent. And the captain was really concerned for this young woman. So he sent for the godmother. That's the name of the Scottish mother-in-law. A real misnomer if ever there was one, the godmother. And the godmother took her home. And I have to say, looked after her very well, treated her as if she was her own daughter. But she could never get her to speak. She just spoke to her every day and said, my Johnny will be home soon. My Johnny is a fisherman. He's at sea at the moment. And back then, and even now, today, it is one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. And sometimes they're out at sea, especially in the North Sea fishing, for weeks at a time. But now her Johnny was coming home. Well, the very next day, she could hear the excitement out in the street. She could hear the kids saying, Johnny's come home from the sea again, he's home, he's home. Johnny's come home from the sea again, he's home, he's home. And they ran out to the front door. And when she saw her son, she ran down into the street and they ran towards each other. And that young woman looked at him and fell instantly in love with this young man. He was so handsome. And when he saw her, he felt exactly the same. And when his mother told him who she was and where she had been found, he felt so sorry for her. And he began to speak to her as well every day, just as his mother had. And she began to respond to him. Not in any great way, but she opened up ever so slightly. But she realised very soon that she was falling in love with this young man, and he with her. Now, she had the most incredible dilemma you could ever imagine. Does she stay, or does she make her effort to try and get back to the sea? If she stays, she only has 7 years as a human person, and then she'll expire, she'll die. But if she goes back to the sea, I don't know if you know this, but mermaids can live for hundreds of years. And they rarely change. They look exactly as they always did. But she was so taken with this young man and so much in love with him that she decided to stay. They got married. And just 6 months later, she discovered she was with child. Now, another dilemma. If she stays to watch him grow, she'll only see him when he's a very small child. She won't live to watch him grow up or if she goes back to the sea, she will. She has to decide which way she's going to go. And that night that her baby boy was born, she looked down into the face of that baby and she fell in love all over again. She didn't want to miss her son's life. She picked a pin from her lapel, and as he's sleeping in his father's arms by the fireside, she lifted his foot and pricked his heel, and a tiny spot of blood appeared. And it rolled onto her hand and turned into a blood-red footprint made of glass. And she looked at it, and a tear fell from her eye, and it fell into her hand, and it turned into a tiny pearl drop. And she put them in her pocket. And she bent over and she kissed her husband's forehead, and she kissed her baby's forehead. And she walked out the back door, out down onto the beach. And as she approached the water, she felt it round her foot. And then she started to take off her clothes. And she took the little red bead and the pearl and held onto them in her hand. And took off the rest of her clothes. And as the water reached up to her thighs and then her waist, her tail appeared behind her. It was magnificent. Every colour under the rainbow. She felt something she had never felt before. She felt as if she was going home, but she also felt as if she had left her home behind. Her heart was broken no matter which way. But she was able to watch her son grow up. And within a very short time, days in fact, when she was watching that kitchen door, leaning on the rock that she had been standing on, tide was back in. She was on that rock and she was watching that back door, and her husband appeared with her baby son in his arms, several months old now, and they were both looking out to the sea, and her husband was pointing. She thought, he's known all along who I was and what I was and where I've gone. But she was able to watch that little boy grow up. She was able to watch him play football on the beach. She was able to watch him walk hand in hand with his first girlfriend along the beach. She was able to see him getting married. She was able to see his children. She was able to see his grandchildren and their grandchildren. And now she was telling this story to that young woman sat on that rock, because she knew exactly why that young woman was despondent and sad. She said, go home. Tell your husband what it is you have to tell him. He won't be angry. And the young woman put her shoes on and she ran all the way home, pushed open her kitchen door, and there was her husband and their 5 children. And he's stirring a pot of beans on the stove. Where have you been, for goodness sake? I've been trying to keep these kids happy until you got back, but I'm having to feed them, they're starving, blah, blah, blah. She went, oh, I couldn't tell you the news because I thought you would be really angry. I still think you'll be really angry. He said, what news? She says, I'm going to have another child. Oh, wow. Why would I be angry? He says, at this rate, I'm going to get my football team anytime soon. So I'm glad to tell you, that was another young family that lived happily ever after. So, let me tell you now. I'm going to tell you the story of the young soldier. I know you've heard this, Johannes, but I want you to hear it again so that you'll be able to tell it. There were 4 young soldiers who were fighting in World War II. And first of all, sorry, I'm going to go back a step. There's a tradition in Scottish storytelling, in fact, in British storytelling, excuse me, that is, you should always give credence to whoever you heard a story from if it's not your own. This story doesn't belong to me. I don't know actually where it originated from, but I do know that the last person to tell it, although I didn't hear it then, was Joe Conrad, one of the storytellers who comes on to one of the Zooms that I run. So Joe, I'm giving you the credence for this story about this group of young soldiers, and thanks for letting me have it. So this group of 4 young soldiers are fighting in World War II, and they have become really close friends. They've become brothers in arms, and they've sworn allegiance to each other. They're going to look out for each other no matter what happens. And sadly, the inevitable did happen. One of these young soldiers got killed in battle. And as he lay there on the battlefield with his friends around him, they were heartbroken. It was as if they had actually lost a brother, a real brother, because that's what it felt like. He was also the youngest, which made it even more sad. He was only 21 years old. His name was Francis. Now, they decided there and then that they were not going to leave him in that battlefield. Oh no. They wanted him not only to be buried, but they wanted him to have a proper burial with a service and prayers said over him. They remembered that they'd seen a church not that far away, and they decided to go to that church and have him buried there. When they got there, the vicar saw them approaching, and he was in the graveyard, and he walked towards them, and they spoke over the fence. Can I help you? And they said, well, our friend here has been killed, and we want to bury him properly. We want him to have a service and say some prayers over him. And the vicar said, well, I don't know if I can bury your young friend here because this is consecrated ground. Was he religious? And they looked at each other. They didn't know. They had no idea. Well, did he believe in God? Any God? They didn't know. These were 4 young men who were fighting a war, and they had never discussed death. But that's hardly surprising. In those circumstances, it's not really something you would be talking about. And they had to admit that they didn't know. And the vicar said, well, I'm sorry. I can't bury him in this graveyard because it's consecrated ground. You mean we'll have to leave? And the vicar said, well, you can bury him right up against the fence by the apple tree here. They really didn't have any choice. Where were they going to go with him? So they had to bury him outside the graveyard in that ground. They were heartbroken about this. They felt that in some way they'd let him down. They had promised allegiance to each other that whatever happened, they would make sure that this didn't happen. No choice. They made a makeshift cross, and on that cross they put his name, his date of birth, and the date that he had died. And they said their own prayers over him. And they left. They left with very heavy hearts. They were heartbroken. And they agreed that they would come back a year later. Had the war ended, they would come back, or whenever the war ended, they would come back. It was actually only 3 months later when the war ended. So almost a year to the day when that young man had died, he came back to pay homage to him at that graveyard. When they got there, they couldn't find his grave. They knew exactly where it was. They found the apple tree. There was no grave. what on earth, where could he be, what's happened? And they saw the vicar and they called him over and they said, what's happened? Where has our friend gone? And the vicar said, he's exactly where you left him. He's exactly where you buried him. No, he's not here. And the vicar said, no, that's because I've moved the fence. Can't you see that it now goes round the apple tree? They hadn't even noticed that. The vicar had moved the fence so that that young man would be buried in that consecrated ground. He said, I couldn't sleep after you left. I couldn't sleep with the guilt that I felt that I had refused to bury a young man in consecrated ground because I didn't know his religion. For all I knew, he could have been very religious, and here he was outside. So I couldn't do it. I had to include him. So I moved the fence. And they were so relieved. And do you know what I think? I think this world would be a much better place if we moved all the fences. Don't you?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, folks. Oh, hello. There you go. Find yourself a seat.
I have to see you, I can't hear.
All right. Okay. Do you want to? You can sit closer then.
No, it's okay, but there,
All right.
I'm doing my things in case
Okay.
someone
You're
was.
not like- You find it? Okay. Now, what I'm going to tell you now. Okay. I'm going to tell you. And I think I can remember this story. The problem is when I don't write my stories down, so they're all in here, and I have to remember them. And sometimes when I tell the story, another character will creep in that wasn't there before, or one will disappear that had been there before. So let me see if I can tell you this story, remembering everybody that's in it. Yes, I'll do that one. If you can imagine, there was a young man who had one dream, and it was to follow a circus, to join a circus. And he was only 14 years old, so he's a little bit older than you, Johannes. I thought you were 13 or 14 when I first saw you. And this young man was just a couple of years older than you, and he was determined to go and join the circus. He wasn't happy at home. He didn't have a happy home life. And to be perfectly honest, he had been gone for 3 days before his folks even missed him. And in those 3 days, he was following where the circus had been and where he had been told it was moving to. And he was going through the fields along the side of the countryside, and he looked down and he saw movement. And it was a frog. And he thought, oh, and he liked frogs. So he picked it up. And when he looked at it, the frog said, who are you? Well, he almost fainted. This frog had spoken to him. Frogs can't speak. Well, they can in stories. He says, I'm going to join the circus. Oh, that's a great idea. Can I come with you? And the young man was extremely bright. And he thought, if I've got a talking frog to take to the circus, they're going to let me join. Sure, they'll let me join if I've got a talking frog. So the frog said, you can put me in your pocket if you like. I quite like when it's dark. So he put the frog in his pocket and he carried on. And he came to the town where the circus was supposed to be that day, but he had miscounted the days and it had moved on to the next town. So he had another 2 days walk to that town. And during that time, he ate whatever he could find growing, apple off a tree, whatever. And by the time he got there, he was absolutely starving. And he went straight to the fortune teller's tent and he said to her, I want to join this circus. And she said, oh, I think you might be a bit too young to join the circus. He said, well, I've got no family. I'm on my own. She said, well, I'll put a good word in for you. I'll speak to the circus master. And the circus master wasn't a very pleasant man. But she said, I think he might find work for you because you're a fit young lad. He says, I'm not just that. He says, I've got something very special. And he took the frog out of his pocket. And he says, I've got a talking frog. He said, Frog, speak to this lady. And the frog said, oh, you're a fortune teller. And she nearly fainted. This frog had spoken to her. She's a fortune teller. Oh, my word. She said, well, if the circus master finds out you've got that talking frog, I don't think he'll want to give you a job. I think he'll want to take your talking frog from you. So I think you should put him back in your pocket and hide him, and then go and see if the circus master has got some work for you. So that's what he did. And when they found the circus master, he did have, the ringmaster did have some work for him. He said, it's not a very good job. It's cleaning up the muck after the animals, but it's a job and it pays enough, for you to live on and feed on. And he said, I'll take the job. So then he got to share a caravan with another person that worked on the circus. And while that person was out, he took the frog out of his pocket and he started trying to find flies to feed it. And he found a few. And the frog was quite happy. And then the frog started talking to him. Unfortunately, just as the circus master was passing the window, the ringmaster, and he heard this strange voice. And he opened the door. And before the boy could do anything about it, he spotted the frog on the table while it was talking. You never told me you had a talking frog. And the boy said, well, I don't want to sell him. I want to keep him. I'll give you £50 for that talking frog. He said, no, I want to keep my talking frog. I'll give you £100 for that talking frog. No, I want to keep it. Well, suit yourself. And the circus master went away. And shortly after, fortune teller came back and she was talking to the young lad and she said, did you see the ringmaster? He said, yeah. He says, he wanted to buy my talking frog. And she says, I'm really worried about you now because he'll do whatever he can to get that talking frog. And sure enough, the circus master comes back with a drink for the young man. And he gave him the glass. And the young man was about to drink it when he saw the fortune teller outside the window. And she was going, not to take the drink. He thought she was just waving at him. So he started to take the drink. So she first opened the door and she came into the caravan and she said, are you okay? And the young lad said, yeah, I'm fine. And she looked at the circus master and she said, are you okay? He said, yeah, I'm fine. He says, I'm just welcoming the young lad here. I've made him this drink and what have you. She knew there was something funny about that drink. She was not happy about that. However, she let him take the drink and within minutes, he had fallen asleep. He didn't fall into a deep sleep. So she sat there and she watched him. And the frog still on the table. And the frog said to the storyteller, what's happened to this young man? She said, don't worry, he's all right. He's just having a wee sleep. He's tired. And the ringmaster standing there, waiting for her to leave because he wants to take this talking frog. She's not going anywhere. And eventually he had to leave. When the young lad woke up again, she said, this is not good. We're going to have to get rid of the ringmaster or he's going to get rid of you so he can have your frog. She now mixed up a special potion, invited the ringmaster back. gave him the drink. The young lad wants to discuss selling his frog. Oh, he was perfectly happy. He sat down and he took the drink. When he took that drink, the most incredible thing you can ever imagine happened. He turned into a fly. He turned into a fly. Anything can happen in a story. And what did you think happened to the fly? The frog swallowed it. The young man stayed with that fortune teller for many years, working at the circus with the talking frog, which made a fortune, and eventually that young man became the ringmaster of that circus. I was up that story for my grandson because he loves frogs. Now I'm going to tell you a story I made up for my granddaughter. The man was called Duncan, right? And he was quite a dull man. He only ever wore beige clothing. And I hate to say it, I hope there's no accountants in the room. He used to work as an accountant, and he did work as an accountant, in fact, and that was quite a boring job. And he did the same things every single day. He ate the same breakfast. His wife made him the same sandwiches, and she was an exact copy of him, a female version. She was very dull. She never wore anything colourful. And he would go to his office every single day. And at 12 o'clock, he would go down and sit on the same park bench, and he would open the sandwiches that his wife made for him, and it would be 4 little sandwiches, and he would eat 3 of them, and he would keep 1. And he would take that one home, and before he went inside to home, he would break up that last sandwich, and he would feed it to the birds. That was his routine every single day. The same breakfast, the same sandwich. They had a different dinner for every day of the week, but it stayed the same every single week. One day when he sat on that park bench, he sees a movement, and he looks, and it's a little fat grub, and it's struggling to get free, but it can't break free, and it's struggling and struggling and struggling, and he's looking at it, and then he sees movement. And it's a bird, a blackbird. And he thinks to himself, if I leave that little guy here, he's going to be lunch for that blackbird. So he picks it up and he puts it in his lunchbox with the last sandwich, closes the lunchbox, goes back to his office. Up on the lift, gets out the lift, walks past his boss's door. His boss has got a glass office. The door is never open, but he sees everything that's going on. And he goes and sits at his desk, and he opens the lunchbox, and he looks at this little grub again, and he thinks, oh, I've got to do something to help it. So he takes a paper clip out of the box, and he opens it up, and he starts to poke at the threads that are holding this cocoon together. And the phone rings, as it did at 1 o'clock every day. It was his wife, Deirdre. Hello, dear, how are you? Oh, I'm fine, dear, how are you? Are you having a good day? Oh, yeah, I've had a lovely day. What about you? I've had a good day too. Oh, but something happened. Something happened? What happened? He says, well, when I was sitting on the park bench, I found this little grub, and it was struggling and struggling, and I could see that it was not going to be able to set itself free. So I brought it back. You didn't. Tell me you didn't. He said, what? She says, you haven't tried to set it free. And he said, well, I haven't done very much. Bring it home. Yeah, I will, dear. Now, Douglas, bring it home now. Well, I can't really just get up and go home now. Bring it home now before it's too late. So he puts the little grub back in the box and closes it and puts it in his briefcase, takes his jacket off the back of the chair and sets off to leave the office. And he's trying to slide past his boss's office without being seen, but it's a big glass wall. So of course he sees it and he calls him back. Douglas, are you leaving? yes, sir. In the 20 years that he's worked at that office, he's never been late and he's never left early. So the boss is a bit, well, what's going on here? He says, I've had a call from the wife. She wants me home. He says, oh, I hope it's nothing serious. He says, no, I don't think so, sir. I'll be back tomorrow at 9 o'clock. He says, well, on you go. He says, on you go. So down he goes. And when he gets home, for the first time in that same 20 years, he didn't open the box and feed that last sandwich to the birds. He just went straight into the house because she's standing there at the front door like this. Come on then, she said, let me see the damage. So they went inside and he put the box on the kitchen table and she's got her sewing box out and he opens it and takes out the little grub. And she says, well, hopefully you've not done too much damage. And she takes a needle and thread. And as she's threading that needle, Douglas feels as if that needle's going right into his eyes. And he's like, I'm sorry. He says, I didn't mean to do any damage. She said, just be quiet. I think you've done enough, but I think we'll save him. So she stitches up that little grub again. And they take him down and they put him on the window ledge. Now, they had never had any children. And that little grub became their first child. They watched that little thing for 4 days while it struggled to get free, struggled and struggled and struggled to break free. And it finally did. And when it broke free, flied around the kitchen for a little while. And then it rested behind a copper pan hanging by the fire. So when Douglas and Deirdre came downstairs in the morning, they thought it had gone, but it hadn't. It was still there. But she said, oh, I think our little boy has gone. He's flew off. The world is his oyster. And they hugged. And he took Deirdre's hand and they went back upstairs. Now, I don't know what happened up there, but that's none of our business. I can only tell you it took 3 days to wipe the smile off Douglas's face. He was very happy. The next day, when he went down to the bench in the park and sat there, he was thinking of that little butterfly. And the next minute, there was a fluttering in the hedge beside him. And he turned round. And there was this butterfly. It was absolutely beautiful. And it flew up and came right up to his face like this and opened its wings, every colour under the sun. And it nodded and flew off. It had just come to say thank you. When he went home, he said to Deirdre, I saw a wee fellow in the park today. And do you know what I decided? Decided it's about time we had a little bit more colour in our lives. And they both went out that weekend and she bought a nice bright new pink skirt and he bought a nice bright blue shirt. And that was it. They lived with colour from then on in, thanks to the butterfly.
Well,
So what time are we at? How much time you got? Yeah, I just
Rona, you are timeless. You are timeless.
who's that?
Baba
C.
C. Yes.
Hello,
Hi. I'm a bit late, I know, but I had to catch some of you. I was in a prior engagement, but you are brilliant. You're mesmerizing.
Thank you, Baba C. Unfortunately, we don't have a great many people here today, but the lovely audience that I do have, I've been appreciative, I'm glad to say. So, Elaine, Keith, I can see you guys now.
Hello, wonderful person leaving the cafe. Hey, Omar.
We're just wrapping up now, Baba C, unfortunately.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
you know what?
Cheer up, thanks for coming. It's good to see you.
It is better to have a drink of water than no water at all.
Well, Mike's taking me, Mike's friends and then I'm taking me out for dinner now, so I've got to finish up and get to where
I keep forgetting it's much later there.
Yeah. All right, guys, I'll see you soon. Thanks for
Okay.
All
coming.
right.
Ellen, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, my love.
Hey,
Guys.
Keith, are you enjoying your stay?
I'm loving it, yes. We've had some rather strange weather, Babasi. The weather's not been very kind to us. We actually had hail the other day, first time ever in Morocco. We had
Oh,
hail.
wow. Our weather's been strange too. It's been
Yeah.
hot, then cold, then wet, then raining, then hot, then cold, and then windy.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully it's dried up today, and hopefully the next couple of days is going to be better.
All
But
right.
I'm happy to be here, and I'm enjoying telling stories at the cafe. Having a great time. Okay, lots of
All
love.
right. Take
I'll see
care.
you. Bye. I'll see you soon.
All right.
So thanks, guys, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.
So, Jan, you're going to go and tell some of those stories, I hope.